Hello, Mama.
Hello, sweetie.
What'd you do today? Or, no, I don't know. I know what you did today.
You do know what I did today.
What'd you do this weekend?
In preparation for our event today, for our podcast today, and the topic, because we're speaking to a death doula about what that means, I have been continuing my gentle art of Swedish death cleaning. I started this a year ago. I continue it, and I can tell you also it makes John crazy because he thinks he's just going to be in the dumpster soon. He really believes it's my excuse for throwing out every tool he owns.
I did not know Swedish people were good at death.
Swedish people are good at cleaning.
And candy. Remember that candy that we got in
Delicious
Venice?
candy, but
sour.
They don't go off topic. This is the way you clean in preparation so that the people you leave behind don't have to do it.
Did you have Swedish candy while you were doing Swedish cleaning?
You know, it's funny you should say that, because I did say to John, can you drive me to Venice? Because I have to get some more Swedish
sour
candy.
balls for my Swedish. Okay, tell me what Swedish death cleaning is.
So, in preparation, so that you are not leaving the crazy house with 100 different things that your kids.
Oh, like a hoarder house.
Well, not even a hoarder house, like my parents' house. Just crammed.
Yeah.
And then nobody knows what to do, and nobody wants anything. And so I've been just throwing things out, which is hard, like looking at photo albums. Who wants this?
Well, it is strange because you're the star of your life, but you're not the star of
your life.
My life.
No.
I was thinking about that because I've kept carefully all of my child writing.
Right.
And I keep wanting that to mean something to anybody. But it means nothing to
me. But I
me.
know your children.
They'll throw it
so fast.
They throw it out next
Today?
weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're more sentimental, but and I know your brothers probably are not as sentimental. Well, they're pretty sentimental, I think. Not when it comes to cleaning out a house. Jeff and Rob will throw everything out.
What gets the nod with your Swedish cleaning?
Okay, but things like yearbooks.
Gone.
Even yearbooks where I've had it dedicated to me.
Photos of children. Gone. Baby teeth.
Ooh. I don't keep baby parts.
No baby parts. We are thrilled today to have a really interesting and very special guest, Nadia Ammar. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
I know this is the part where I'm going to read your formal bio, just so that people can catch up, and then we're going to have the most exciting conversation. We've been excited. Yeah, getting our questions together, but I will jump into this. Nadia Ammar has spent more than 20 years as a fundraiser and philanthropy advisor, helping individuals and nonprofits align with their values with action. Over time, she discovered what fulfilled her most was helping people and find meaning in their lives. The impulse to redirect her career deepened into something more personal when a family health scare forced her to confront her fears around the eventual death of her parents. Nadia is now a trained hospice volunteer and has completed comprehensive death doula training with INELDA, the International End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and Going with Grace. She shifted to freelance nonprofit and philanthropy consulting to create space for this new chapter and is building something thoughtful and bold through Ammar Life and Legacy. Her work supports those who are dying, the people who love them, and anyone ready to take steps to feel at peace with their mortality. She also leads Sit Here, a public interview series where she invites strangers to explore, remember, and open up about all aspects of death and dying. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you.
I was looking at Sit Here just to jump into it because I thought that was such an interesting idea. Can you, just because we've gone through your bio, can you just talk a little bit about that, right?
Sure.
off?
I'm not sure how I got the idea. I think it was because when I told people what I do, they always reacted with a sort of leaning, like a physical leaning in. And I also felt a kind of relief come from many of them that they could talk about it, that there were people that wanted to talk about this kind of thing. And it was the same whether or not they had experienced a loss recently or had aging parents. It was sort of universal. And it made me think about how we are a death phobic culture. And I also felt that it's often easier to talk to strangers. You're not worried about how you come across often. There's no context that they view you in or that you view them in. So I just thought, I don't know, I want to do this. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. It is, you do feel anxiety when you go and sit in a park and you have a sign that says, sit here if you think you'll die one day. And I put a disclaimer that said, not therapy, not religion, just a sincere conversation, because I wanted to make that clear. And I did it first in Pan Pacific Park, and I was amazed. I sat down. It was a long 45 minutes, but then I got person after person, and I was there for 5 hours. And I just, I'm obviously extroverted because I really drew so much energy from those conversations. And a lot of people at the end said to me, thank you. That was therapeutic. That felt so good. That I hadn't thought about that before. So I've continued them, and I just want to see what I can learn from them. It's really important to get around to the right questions. And sometimes you've probably thought, oh, why didn't I ask that? And as guests, we probably say, oh, why didn't I say that? And so the more that you practice speaking to people, and it's just such a good way to do it with strangers, because as I say, there's just less inhibition.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about you. I mean, obviously you've had this illustrious life and you've been a fundraiser, and that's a very different type of job.
Yeah.
So what did you have a calling for this? When did you realize that this was going to be your next chapter?
My father, who is still with us, he at 89 had a TIA, which I perhaps subconsciously am blocking remembering what it stands for, but it's like described to me as a mini stroke. And I just started to think about how have I said everything I want to say to him? Have I addressed what we should do if he can't speak for himself? Do I know? Am I comfortable with him dying? And the answer was no, really not. Um, and then the assumption that just because my mother is 10 years younger, that nothing's going to happen to her, and some guilt around not feeling, as urgently worried about her just because she's younger. And I realized that this is all related. It's what are we here for anyway? And I am just someone who lives intensely. I like intense flavors, colors, and and how much more intense can you get than facing your own mortality? So it is to me linked to philanthropy because it is about making meaning of our lives, which if we don't make meaning for ourselves, then it is literally meaningless. We will all disappear and it won't matter unless we decide that it does.
It's interesting that you say that because a lot of it has to do with legacy.
Yes,
And when you give money and you see your name on a building, that becomes a sort of legacy.
absolutely.
But everybody has their own legacy. And I think wondering what you want to be remembered for.
Exactly.
Is it really the money I had? Is it really the money I spent? Or what is it that I feel, um, I'm leaving? Um, as ephemeral as we are, as transient as our life is, you have to always hope for something that made your life worthwhile and memorable.
Yeah. And is it Maya Angelou who said it's not what you've said to people, it's how you make them feel that they'll remember. So that is so true. And I've spoken to a lot of people about legacy, and some feel regret and shame, and that they didn't amount to enough because they don't have a legacy. And some people feel that if they didn't have children, they didn't have a legacy, or if they didn't pass something tangible on, they don't have a legacy. But often your legacy is that you brought joy to people, that when they remember you, they'll think of the joy, or they'll think that you supported them one day, or that you were there for them one day. And that's what's at the center of this. That's what's really important to me, and that's what makes it feel okay to let go. It isn't about how long something lasts. It's what you did with it, because that is what we need to remember is completely natural, is that it won't last. Um, there's a, perhaps I'm in a literary mood, because I was thinking of a quote by Don DeLillo from his book Underworld, which I'm not going to quote perfectly, but it's something like, sometimes when I see something, it is, there's so much shock in the beauty of it that I know I can't linger. I have to love it and trust it and leave. And so it's about the fact that you let it go is what makes it meaningful. And if you stay too long, he says, you wear out the wordless shock of it. And death is its own shock. And if you hold on to people too long, I relate that to the quality of life argument, because that's another important area of supporting someone and honoring their wishes, is letting them go when they no longer have a quality of life. It isn't just about the physiological pain that they may be experiencing or not. It's about the suffering of having no longer a quality of life.
Last night at the dinner table, I mentioned to my family that this was going to be the podcast, and um, of all the many questions, the question that was foremost in the mind of the 158-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 18-year-old was, what is a day in the life of a death doula, if there even is such a typical day?
So there is no typical day, and it's perhaps a good time to mention that a death doula is an entrepreneur, because right now it is not a licensed industry. I can get a license as a social worker, but not, or a psychotherapist, but not as a death doula. In a way, that's a good thing, because it means that I can train, and that a lot of my training is through practice and experience, and it means that I can bring my own gifts and decide, as a death doula, what am I doing? And so if I happen to have been a massage therapist, then that could be something that I offer. Touch therapy. If I happen to be good at art, I might offer something like that for a remembrance. Or there's so many things that are needed and could be part of a death doula's toolbox, that it really does vary. I cannot sing or paint or draw. I'm a pretty good writer. So, so it could, and I'm pretty good at admin, and I'm a very good advocate, and I get things done. And that's a good trait to have, because when you are in the throes, when you're in that moment, I don't care if you yourself are a palliative care doctor, if it's your partner or your loved one that is actively dying, you are not making a lot of decisions that you need to make fully grounded. And so, and in the and once that person dies, there's so many things that are just, nobody wants. What you should do after someone dies is literally nothing. Nothing. And then a death doula can help you. Let's order some death certificates. You probably need 15. Most people will be like, 15? There's like a million things that need a death certificate. Before you even get, this is the issue with healthcare in general, we usually come to deal with it too late. If you're fortunate enough to have thought about it in time, you can tell someone, in the event that I'm unable to speak for myself, I want this person to speak for me. And I've had a conversation with that person. They know this, and we've had an in-depth conversation about what that means. And we've reviewed it maybe once a year, ideally, but at least every 5 years, because you may think now, let's say you're 30, you're like, oh no, I don't want any intervention. I want a completely natural death. And then maybe 20 years later, there are other reasons that you say, no, I want you to literally do everything you can. I want you to bomb my body with every medical intervention that you can to make sure I'm still here. Who knows? We have to constantly keep that conversation going. So the day of life in a death doula, it's kind of built on what that person's strengths are. So you could be sitting bedside with somebody. You could literally be at a vigil where, and this is how a lot of people are like, what is the difference between hospice and palliative care and death doula and whatever and whatever? Essentially, in the ideal world, you would have all of it and it would all be working as a team, except palliative care becomes hospice when you have a life expectancy of 6 months or less and you've decided to stop curative measures. You're still being given comfort measures. You still can receive medications. We're just not going for a cure. We're going for comfort. So ideally, you would have a death doula who is helping the family have some conversations that they might need to have that they haven't had. You're advocating for the patient, so you may be hearing someone say, well, I don't care, we're a Catholic family and we're going to have a church service for, I don't know, that's the first thing that came to my mind. And you may know that this person thought, they don't want that. And the good news would be that you could have gotten their preferences in writing, and you can actually hold that up and be like, I'm so sorry, but this is what's going to happen. And you can actually make that happen. And the other person, regrettably, wouldn't get their way, let's say, because we have the wishes of the patient.
I remember hearing that there are two kinds of people in a crisis: people who elevate to match the crisis, and people who go down and are very calm.
Yeah.
And that is how, among the attributes of being a death doula, it seems that what you are bringing, obviously a capability, but is like an enormous sense of this must be, you have to have, because I don't think I would be parsing, oh, what's the difference between palliative? It's like all a burning building to me. Like, it just sounds like you're running into a burning building. It feels like this is the work it requires just a steadfastness.
My father was an obstetrician and gynecologist, and I remember very clearly that he was about to go and do a surgery. He told me this, obviously I wasn't there. He was about to go and do a surgery, and the patient was already under anesthetic, and a phone call came through to him urgently, which I don't know why they let the call through, but they said, there was a call from Egypt saying, like, your brother is dead, and we don't have any more details. And he had to hang up the phone and go and do the surgery. Because if he had gotten her out of anesthesia, I was like, that's not right. If he had pulled her from anesthesia, then we had rescheduled the surgery, real big kind of bureaucratic mess. So he just steeled himself, and he was just like, right. And he did the surgery. And then he went home. When I was 18, he actually brought me, I went to school, a boarding school. And so when I think I was 17, it was my senior year, and I came home with a friend, and Dad was like, oh, I have to go deliver baby. I'm like, Dad, we're only here for the weekend. Like, come on. I was annoyed. And he's like, well, just come with me. And he takes us, and he asked the lady, she's like, I don't care, whatever. She said, just get it out of me. So I got to watch him deliver baby in a way he was just like, all right, let's go. Like, it was just like if I were, I don't know, baking a cake or picking up groceries. Like, he just knew what he was doing. He'd been doing it for decades. And he's always, I think it's because of him that I feel comfortable in those situations, in hospital. And I'm not, if it's my own crisis, I'm going to react differently. Trust me. But I'm separate from this. So, and I just have that, like, I'm your advocate. And so it's just, I don't know. It's something in me that goes, okay, I have to help this be okay. And so I can focus.
It's amazing how we compartmentalize, particularly in this day and age. You have your medical advice, you have all of these people, and yet it would be so wonderful if there could be some communication so people understood.
Absolutely.
Someone is advocating. When my father died, my mom called 911 because I know you have to do that for the body. And they had come and said to my mother, thank you so much, because she had a big sign that said DNO. And so they said, there is no such thing at 89 to resuscitate. That's basically breaking your bones, but people don't know that.
Correct.
And then they left. So that was a good first step. And then everything else was chaos. because you have children who are grieving with one idea. You have, I mean, he's now gone, but nobody knew what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yes, he's Catholic,
Yeah.
so there would be a mass, but then even navigating that with half of the family, most of the family, no longer practicing Catholics, and therefore being shut out
Mm.
of
Mm.
their father's last
Yeah.
event. And so the decisions we made and what it felt like, even writing his obituary,
Yeah.
and it would have been so nice to have along the way several voices, the medical voice, at that point too late for that, but to have somebody really take my mom, who is 80 years old, in deep grief,
Yeah.
through the practical piece, because she, like you, is a practical person, and that would have given her an anchor.
Yeah.
And also authority for 7 voices of children
Yeah.
with different opinions.
Yeah.
It was a chaotic time.
Yeah. And how much better would you feel? I mean, I actually, because of this, I sat my dad down and I was like, I know this is strange, Dad, but, I've realized that I need to ask you some questions about death and dying so that I can feel more comfortable with the day that you die. And so we sat down and I recorded an interview with him. And I asked him everything I wanted to ask him, like, what do you think about dying? Like, what should we do when you die? What should your funeral be like? And, what do you want us to remember about you? And I mean, I had a million questions. And I feel much better now. And I've also recorded that and I can share it with my sister, my mother, whoever, might want to see it. And that's another thing. Some people are very private about these things. They think, death is a private matter. I don't want strangers in. I don't know how you could bring a death doula in, like, to be with us at the most intimate time of our lives. And that's why it does need some education, because it does help.
But it also sounds as though there's so many hats.
Yeah.
There's the diplomacy piece. There's almost a family therapy piece.
Yes.
And then there's the person who is,
Yes.
the dying person.
Yes.
And that's sort of this very intimate
Mm-hmm.
piece. When you are invited in, sort of as a stranger, there must be so many different experiences. But would you say that, I think that people would be very interested in, is it memories? Is it sensory? Or is everything, is it so unique it's a snowflake you can't?
It's always different.
Always different.
Yeah. You can go in, to 100 different rooms and there's going to be 100 different starting points and situations that you're in. And it always depends on the day as well. That's particularly true when you're dealing, for example, with someone that has dementia. One of my people is in an assisted living facility, has lived there for about 4 or 5 years, but now is on hospice. And a lot of people don't realize that hospice can come to your home, and that is that patient's home. And that patient has dementia. And actually, that patient inspired me when I was getting dressed this morning, because yesterday I was with them and I happened to be wearing bright colored clothing, and they did not know who I was by any stretch of the imagination. And the one thing that they seemed to latch onto was the color. I also had another pair of yellowy orange shoes on and an orange sort of dress, and they really latched onto that color. And I thought, yeah, people think you should be subdued and you should, and I don't know how. That person is on hospice. That means they have, presumably, it seems, less than 6 months. And that person's dementia is developing. I've, even just in the short time that I've been their doula, I can see it. So we're going to get to a point where, well, anything could happen actually, but we could get to the point where they are bedridden. And so I felt like I discovered that color is a way I can communicate with this person. Color is a way I can bring this person joy. And I do know that originally, this person is 98, and I do know that their career was in fashion.
Oh,
that's lovely.
that's a great story.
That is a great
I love
story.
that.
For over 30 years, I have attended probably more funerals than anyone ever.
Right.
Because I realized that I have attended, sadly, children's funerals,
Yeah.
baby funerals,
Yeah.
grandparents, parents, and also as representing an institution, you become something else. You
Yes.
become more important in a way than you
Totally.
were in a student's life. Probably, it's a touchstone. It's somebody to hold and to hug. And I've also seen the way every religion has managed it, and also agnostic, poetry reading, and seeing families torn apart by death, and also families that have grown and realized. I remember hearing a parent who had lost a child saying, "I will never have another happy day in my life because I will have always lost this child." And that didn't happen. They did have, it doesn't mean the death didn't, you still grieve. You'll grieve for the rest of your life. You will just grieve differently.
And that's very common to have guilt around. If I'm seen to not be grieving anymore, am I making other people think that I didn't actually love them? That is often a fear of people. And again, it's about appearances, and again, it's cultural, and it's sad to see. And I've also seen the other side of people who, that is the way that they grieve. They keep that person present, and you get at times judgment where, they haven't let that person go. They should move on. They're obsessed with that person. And I can relate to those opinions, and I understand that what they mean is, I want that person to be happy. I don't want them to be weighed down by this loss. I want them to move on. But what we need to acknowledge is it doesn't matter what we want. It's what helps them.
Is there anything that you see in terms of children or younger people versus older people and how they relate to this, or their...
I have not personally seen it. I have had conversations with people who have told me that children, especially under 18, are able to dissociate more easily. They're more fluid because they haven't nailed down their identity like we have, Children, they're not there. And so I have been told that from doulas that I know who have doulaed children, or spoken to them about their parents, that it's not that they're not sad, it's just that they haven't spent years building up a resistance to it and can more easily identify it as something that happens. I've heard of school grounds of children being said, okay, everyone, let's all go find something that's dead, and they'll find leaves and branches and maybe a bug or something, and then they'll talk about it, and they've got no qualms, and they're not freaked out at all, because it's being socialized in that moment that this is a normal thing. And sometimes the kids will say things like, oh, well, this died so that can continue to grow. And they get it more. It's more intuitive. There are times when the family will hire the doula and say, don't tell her that she's dying, just say that you're a friend. And then most often the person knows that they're dying. And then they either mention it or they don't, but they know. And so this idea that it should be hidden because it's a terrible thing. It is sad, and nobody wants to lose someone that they love. Of course, they always want them there. But again, we need to remind ourselves what is the natural way of existence. That is the most natural thing.
To your point, when you've seen someone whose family says don't tell, and you go in and the person, you feel the person knows, talk about that, would you, about how does a person know they're
You
dying?
So they feel it. Their body, our bodies know how to die. There are systems that change. There are desires that wane. Your body knows that it doesn't need nutrition because nutrition is to live and to stay alive. So your body stops sending you hunger and thirst signals. And that is a very common one where family members feel stress because they want you inherently to be here and to continue to live. They want you to be comfortable, and it seems uncomfortable and unhealthy not to eat or drink. And so might be the time that they try to give you your favorite ice cream or chocolate or whatever it is. You can see where my preferences are. Um, and it's really interfering with the body dying because your body knows that by stopping drinking that it can release uh, basically natural painkillers to help you to feel comfortable. So you can create your own Tylenol or Advil or whatever you want to call it, and your body just knows how to do that, just like your body knows how to beat the heart without you wondering how to make it happen. And we just, as a society, we don't know those things. We don't know that that's what the body's doing. So if we could have a doula to say, oh, they're telling us that they've moved to this stage, that they are in a place where they'd like to let go a little bit more. Um, and I think it's important to not create language that sounds more comfortable. I personally make a point of saying die and not pass. Right. I wouldn't correct someone if they said anything else they wanted to say. Uh, but I think it's not a bad thing. And they say you die how you live. So if you are a very independent person who's always been like, usually women, uh, you kind of hold out. You last. You hear of people wanting to wait until someone gets there, and you also hear of people wanting everyone to get out of the room, and they have no way of expressing that, but they're aware when they're alone and choose then to go. Death has become a medicalized event. Yeah. It's fantastic what medicine can do, but we've kind of blurred the line and need to sort of dial it back a little and remind ourselves that um, it's not about keeping ourselves alive at any cost. You hear any number of stories of someone who's on a ventilator in a hospital for 2 years. I, I can't say or know how that person feels. They've done MRI studies where they say that it appears that the last thing to shut down is hearing. Right. So many people are conscious and do know what is going on. Would they want to be in that position? We don't know because they can't tell us, and they maybe never told us before what their wishes were, and maybe never had that notarized in an advance directive or a living will, so we can't enforce it even if we did know. And that's why these conversations are so important. So it goes back to, yes, let's do whatever we can to help people live long, but really what helps you live the longest is for you to plan. 92% of us will die of disease. Only 8% of people in this country die of accidental death, which includes suicide, homicide. So if we're all going to die mostly of disease, it's true you could die of diseases 24, 44, 84. But if we're going to die of disease, it's possible, maybe more likely, that there'll be this period of time where there's a decline. It could be fast or slow, and you want to have some things in place. And this is the hardest part.
I know I went to a funeral and it was a young mom and it just ripped everyone apart. She was in her 30s.
Yeah.
She wasn't feeling well. It was just one of those things. And she went in the hospital. And the dad couldn't talk to the little children about it. He never took them to visit her
I
because,
have seen that.
yeah, he
It's
did
not a
not
place
want
for
them.
children.
It's not, he didn't want it to be, I understand it. He didn't want it to be their last memories of this beautiful, vibrant mom. And I went to the service, and I will never forget the face of her mother, the woman who died. As they walked out, the grief on this woman's face was just palpable. You could not, she wasn't crying. She was stoic, and it was absolutely wrenching. And the little daughter had obviously, I think she was in second grade, first grade. They obviously bought her new clothes, and she walked out ahead of her mom's coffin, swinging her brand new purse. Yeah. And I thought, there's generational, the grandmother just in unbelievable, unfathomable grief.
Yeah.
And this little girl who would spend her life missing all of those landmarks that a daughter will grieve when a mother dies prematurely.
And when she becomes her mother's age, she'll be aware of that she's the age her mother died. And I think that reminds me and makes me think of people's feelings about what is a long enough life. Is it, we always say when someone dies over, let's say 80, oh, they had good innings, or that one's okay, they had a full life. But if ever someone were to die at a younger age, whatever young means to someone, especially if they were a child, then we're just distraught, more distraught, because we think that's so unfair that they just get to live a full life. It's the years that you made and what you made of them. And so I would advocate controversially, my partner does not agree with me on this, but I was mentioning to him someone who received an ALS diagnosis, and so for sure they will not see their children grow up. And he felt that no, there's no way that's okay. There's just no way that's okay, and there's no way you can say that it's a full life. And I said, I think and hope that when that person is actively dying, they will have come to peace with it, because you are going to miss something. You as a parent are not really likely going to be there when they're 80. So it is sad, and yes, it's easy to imagine how much more there could have been. But why is that the marker of a valuable life? How long it was?
It's a good point. It's a lovely, lovely way to probably end our podcast, to think about the value of a life. I've been so moved because I feel as though I grew up never talking about death, and now I think it's something that is so interesting. I follow hospice nurses. There's a wonderful doctor who he's a palliative care, and he talks about how to train your doctor. And I think what a wonderful statement, how to create your team. And now the thought of having someone else, somebody as a real advocate, makes such sense. And I'm so glad that you're doing this. And what an exciting pivot for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was fascinating conversation. I'll be thinking about this long after. Thanks so much for being with us for So Mom. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we would love it if you gave us that 5-star rating wherever you listen or watch or get your pod on.